My parents dressed me as a girl when I was born because they didn't want another son. They spoiled my brother with a brand new car and a huge 18th party, gave me a broken Subaru. Now they have neither of us. Hey, Reddit. I grew up in a house where favoritism wasn't even hidden. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't one of those situations where you wonder if you're imagining it. It was out in the open, plain as day. My older brother was the favorite. There's something my grandma told me in college I didn't know, but once I learned it, every memory of favoritism suddenly made sense. She said my parents had expected someone else, not the son they got. For the first months of my life, they treated me like that other child, the one they had imagined. I didn't know this growing up. All I felt was the constant favoritism toward my brother and the cold distance toward me. I thought it was just about him being the firstborn, or me not being good enough. But what my grandma revealed explained why nothing I did ever seemed to matter to my parents, and why the favoritism ran so deep. The best way I can show you how bad the favoritism was is to compare what happened on my brother's 18th birthday with what happened on mine. When my brother turned 18 in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, my parents still threw what looked like a full-on event. They rented a sound system, hired a DJ, decorated the backyard like it was a wedding, and made it a huge deal. Family, friends, neighbors, everyone came. Restrictions or not, they just didn't care. They gave him a car. A newer model, shiny, looked almost brand new. He got to stand there, grinning while everyone clapped. My mom cried happy tears. My dad kept saying how proud he was. Fast forward to my 18th in 2022. By then, I already had this expectation that maybe it wouldn't be as big as my brother's, but I thought they'd at least try to make it a little special. I had good grades, better than my brother's, in fact. I just landed a scholarship for college. I thought maybe they'd be proud of me. My birthday came and went with barely a whisper. We had a small cake at home. No party, no friends over, no decorations. Just me, my parents, and awkward small talk. My mom handed me a gift card to a clothing store, and that was it. My dad said happy birthday, like he was reading it off a script. That was the whole thing. It hit me then just how deep the favoritism went. It wasn't even about money. It was about effort, about actually caring. I remember sitting there thinking, wow, they really didn't even try. Later that night, I finally asked them straight out, why did my brother get a car for his 18th and I didn't? Their answer was that he worked harder for it. That's what they told me, while knowing full well I had better academic standing and a bigger scholarship lined up. It didn't add up, and it felt like a slap in the face. Unluckily for them, my grandma overheard the conversation. She was staying with us at the time, and she didn't hold back. She tore into my parents right there in the kitchen, saying it was blatant favoritism, and everyone in the family had seen it for years. My parents tried to argue back, but my grandma is not the type to be pushed around. She called them out for embarrassing themselves and treating their kids unfairly. The fallout from that moment spread fast. Word got to my uncles and aunts. I don't know exactly how many phone calls were made that night, but the whole extended family ended up getting involved. Everyone had seen how they favored my brother, but this birthday thing was kind of the last straw for them. For me, it was both validating and humiliating. Validating because finally, people were acknowledging I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining it. Humiliating because it took my grandma calling them out publicly for them to even pretend to care. The next few days were tense. My parents acted irritated at me, like I was being a brat for wanting equal treatment. But the truth is, I just wanted them to care about me as much as they cared about my brother. I wasn't asking for a sports car or a giant party. I just wanted to feel like my 18th mattered at least half as much as his. That week, extended family started hinting heavily that my parents should fix things. My uncle even texted me separately, saying, they're going to have to do something. Don't let them guilt you. My parents eventually cracked, but the way they handled it only made things worse. They decided to buy me a car, but not in a thoughtful way. It was basically them tossing me the bare minimum to shut everyone up. When they handed me the keys, they said it like I was some spoiled kid getting a toy I didn't deserve. No ceremony, no, we're proud of you. Just this awkward, sarcastic moment in the driveway where they gave me an old late 90s Subaru. At first, I thought maybe it was a win. I actually liked the look of it. I needed a car badly because we lived far from any bus stops and I couldn't get to work otherwise. But even in that moment, I could feel they didn't want to give it to me. It was just them trying to save face with the family. That's when I realized something important. Everything they did for me was reactive. It wasn't because they wanted to, it was because someone else pressured them into it. That realization stung more than the lack of a party, or even the junk car. After the whole awkward car gift in the driveway, I tried to act grateful. I really did. I didn't have another option anyway. I figured maybe this was a step toward them treating me fairly. I was wrong. At first glance, it looked okay. The paint wasn't terrible. The inside was a little worn, but clean enough. I remember sitting behind the wheel thinking, all right, this might actually work out. But the second I drove it down the street, I knew something wasn't right. The engine sounded rough. There was this weird ticking, and the smell of coolant started creeping through the vents. I pulled into a gas station a mile from the house and called my uncle, because he's the only one in the family who actually knows cars. He came by, listened to it, and said, "This thing's got a blown head gasket. Looks like they used some cheap sealer to hide it. A temporary trick that keeps a car running just long enough to fool someone, but it never lasts." I just sat there feeling stupid. Like, of course they wouldn't give me something decent. Of course they'd give me a car that was basically a time bomb. When I brought it up to my parents later that night, I didn't even come at them angry. I just said, "The car's not working right. It's overheating already." Uncle said it's probably the head gasket. My dad didn't even look up from the TV. He just shrugged and said, "Well, that's karma for demanding something you didn't deserve." That set me off. I said, "Karma?" I asked why my brother got a working car and I didn't. "You bought me junk on purpose and now you're acting like it's my fault?" My mom cut in, rolling her eyes. "You should be happy we even got you anything. Most kids your age don't get cars at all. You're acting spoiled." I shot back, "Spoiled? He got a brand new car and a giant party. I get a lemon that can't even make it 10 miles without breaking down. How is me asking for equal treatment spoiled?" My dad finally turned toward me, annoyed. "Because you keep running to your grandma and everyone else whenever you don't get your way. That's manipulative," I snapped. "Manipulative? You gave me a car that was basically broken from day one and now you're calling me manipulative because people finally told you off about it?" My mom's voice went sharp. "Don't you dare raise your voice at us. We work hard for everything you have." I said, "No, Grandma and Grandpa are the ones who step in when you screw me over. You only work hard for him? Everything for him is new. Everything for me is leftovers or broken crap." That's when my dad stood up, pointing his finger at me. "Watch your mouth. You're not going to stand in my house and accuse us of not loving you." I laughed bitterly and said, "Then start acting like it. Because right now it looks like you only love one of your kids, and it's not me." The room went quiet for a second. My mom looked like she was about to cry, but instead she crossed her arms and said, "Fine. If you don't like what we give you, then give the car back." I held her stare and said, "Gladly. I'd rather walk than drive junk you gave me just to make me feel like I didn't matter." That's when my grandma, who'd been listening from the hallway, stormed in and tore into them both. "Enough. I've listened to this for years, and I'm sick of it. You gave one son everything and the other scraps. And now you hand him a car that doesn't even run just to make him feel worthless? Shame on you both." My dad muttered, "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," she cut him off. "You're trying to punish him for not being the child you wanted. You think no one sees it? The whole family sees it." By the next weekend, the whole extended family was involved. We ended up having what felt like a full intervention in the living room. My grandparents, my uncle, one of my aunts, all sitting across from my parents, who looked furious but cornered. My grandma laid it all out. The favoritism, the fake Subaru gift, the way they dismissed me. My uncle added that giving me a car with a blown head gasket was cruel, not parenting. My aunt asked bluntly, "Were you hoping he'd fail so you could keep saying he's less than his brother?" My mom snapped back that I didn't need a car anyway. My aunt immediately called that out, pointing out how we lived too far from public transport and how I couldn't hold down a job without one. She said, "You've set him up to fail, and you're proud of it. That's not parenting, that's sabotage." My dad tried to argue, but it was useless. Every excuse they threw out, someone shut down. After hours of back and forth, my grandparents basically forced them to fix it. The Subaru was sold as junk. My uncle went with us to check another car, a used Honda Civic. He inspected every inch before letting my parents pay for it. They didn't want to, but they couldn't say no. Not with the whole family watching, and not after my grandparents had already stepped in financially more than once. When they handed me the keys this time, they didn't try the sarcastic, "you're a brat" act. They just looked tired and angry, like they'd been cornered into doing something decent. Driving that Civic home felt like a relief. It wasn't fancy, but it ran. I could finally get to work, build some independence, and not worry about breaking down every other day. But the way my parents treated me afterward showed their real colors. They started throwing little digs. "Try not to wreck this one," or "Don't expect us to bail you out again." They couldn't just let me have something good without making me feel guilty for it. That's the kind of toxic people they were. Not just favoritism, It was punishment disguised as parenting. If my grandparents hadn't stepped in, I would have been stuck walking or relying on a car that never should have been on the road in the first place. And even when they were forced to treat me fairly, they made sure I knew they hated every second of it. Here is the thing. I thought the favoritism was just about my brother being the firstborn. That made sense to me when I was younger. Maybe parents just naturally put more energy into their first kid. In college, I will cover that more later, my grandma told me something that explained a lot more than I was ready for. It started one afternoon when I was back home visiting during a break. We were sitting at her kitchen table drinking tea, and she suddenly said, "Do you ever wonder why your parents never connected with you the same way?" I kind of froze because, yeah, I'd wondered that my whole life. Before I could even answer, she went to her bedroom and came back with an old photo album. She flipped it open to a page with baby pictures of me. At first glance, it looked normal. Me in my mom's arms, me with my brother, me lying in a crib. But then I noticed something strange. Every picture had me in pink clothes. Some photos even had a name tag pinned to me with a girl's name written on it. I remember pointing at one and asking, "Wait, what is this?" My grandma sighed and said, "Your parents were so convinced you were going to be a girl, they didn't even check. They had everything ready for a daughter. Clothes, toys, even a name. And when you weren't a girl, they didn't handle it well." She told me my mom spent the first 6 months of my life dressing me like a girl and calling me the girl's name they'd picked. That stopped only after my grandparents found out and shut it down hard. The clothes and the wrong name ended in public, but in private my mom kept slipping for years, hesitating on my name, almost saying the other one before correcting herself. My dad avoided using my name at all, sticking to hey or you. Hearing that messed me up. I sat there staring at the pictures, trying to process. It wasn't just that they favored my brother. It was that I literally wasn't who they wanted me to be. My grandma said, "We told them they couldn't raise you as something you weren't, that it wasn't fair to you. We put our foot down." She admitted that she and my grandpa even threatened to take legal action if it didn't stop. Apparently, my mom struggled to call me by my real name for the first couple of years. She slipped up often, and my dad would cover for her. My grandma said it was like they refused to let go of the child they thought they were supposed to have. That's when a lot of things clicked for me. The indifference, the cold looks, the way they only gave me hand-me-downs while my brother got everything brand new. They hadn't just been favoring him. They had been punishing me for not being born the way they imagined. And the hand-me-down thing? That wasn't just laziness. My grandma explained that when I was a little kid, almost all of my clothes came straight from my brother. Shirts too big, pants with holes, shoes that barely fit. Meanwhile, my brother always had shiny new outfits. It wasn't until my grandparents noticed and confronted my parents again that they finally stopped. I asked my grandma why she never told me any of this before. She said, "Because we didn't want you to feel like you were unwanted. We tried to make up for it in other ways." And she did. They were the ones who bought me birthday gifts that actually felt personal, who showed up to my school events, who encouraged me when my parents couldn't even fake it. Still, seeing those photos hit different. It was proof that the rejection started before I was even old enough to notice. I went back to my dorm that night with scans of some of the pictures she gave me. I just sat on my bed scrolling through them, staring at baby me in pink and a name tag that wasn't mine. It was surreal. Part of me was angry, but mostly I just felt hollow. It explained so much, but it also confirmed what I'd always suspected deep down. They didn't want me. My grandma told me one last thing before I left her house that day. She said, "We love you. Don't ever forget that. Whatever they did, you've always had people on your side." That helped a little, but it didn't erase the fact that my own parents had tried to erase me before I'd even learned to walk. Even worse, I realized how much of their attention to my brother wasn't just favoritism. It was compensation. He was the son they wanted, the one who didn't remind them of their disappointment. That's why they poured everything into him. It also explained why my grandparents had always been extra protective of me. They'd seen what was going on behind the scenes from day one. They kept me from having an even worse childhood. Without them, I don't even want to imagine how bad it could have been. The part that stung most was knowing it never had to be this way. Plenty of parents hope for one thing and get another, but they still love their kids. My parents just couldn't. Learning the truth made me rethink every memory, every ignored achievement, every cold shoulder, every "why can't you be more like your brother?" It wasn't about me not being good enough. It was about me never being what they pictured. That knowledge didn't fix anything, but it gave me clarity. My parents weren't just toxic because of favoritism. They were toxic because they let their disappointment shape our entire family dynamic. And from that point on, I stopped blaming myself for it. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. Leaving for college felt heavy instead of freeing. My dad loaded the Civic like it was a chore. My mom stared at her phone, and there was no hug or "we're proud of you." When my brother left, they'd thrown a cookout with neighbors, gifts, and tears. For me, it was silence and a rushed goodbye. My grandma was the only one who made it feel like it mattered. I drove off with this weird feeling in my stomach, excited to finally be out, but already knowing I wasn't leaving behind a family that cared. The Civic became my lifeline in college. Rides to class, late shifts, everything. I kept up with maintenance because I knew my parents wouldn't help if it broke. It only held up thanks to my uncle double-checking it before they bought it. At Christmas, I hoped for better. Instead, they treated me like a stranger. When I asked my dad about work, he muttered, "Busy." My mom gave a fake smile and walked off. But when my brother spoke, they lit up, hanging on every word about his classes and friends. At one point, my aunt even pulled me aside and whispered, "I'm sorry they act like that. Everyone sees it." That helped a little, but it also stung knowing the favoritism was that obvious to everyone. The final straw that Christmas was when my scholarship came up in conversation. We were all sitting around the table after dinner when my grandma mentioned it. She smiled at me and said, "We're so proud of you. You got an even bigger scholarship than your brother did." The room went quiet for a second. My mom's smile looked forced. "Well," she said, "scholarships don't mean everything. There's more to life than grades." I raised my eyebrows. "So when he got his scholarship, it was a huge deal. But when I get a bigger one, suddenly it doesn't matter?" My dad muttered under his breath, "You just got lucky." That hit me wrong. Lucky? I worked for it. You saw how many nights I was up studying. You know it wasn't luck. My mom's voice got sharper. "Don't talk back. We've supported you too. You should be thankful instead of throwing it in our faces." I shot back, "Supported me? You didn't even want to help with my tuition until Grandma and Grandpa forced you. That's not support. That's saving face." My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Watch your tone. You think we don't notice how ungrateful you are? Everything turns into a competition with you." I leaned forward. "I didn't make it a competition. You did. The second you gave him everything and left me with scraps. Now that I finally have something better, you can't even admit it." The whole table went silent. My grandma glared at them. My uncle shook his head. My parents just sat there stiff, acting like I'd insulted them by pointing out the truth. That's how they were. My achievements weren't worth celebrating because they didn't want me outshining the son they had chosen as their golden child. Money was the same story. My brother's tuition, rent, and expenses were fully covered. Mine? Only partly paid after my grandparents pressured them. And even then, my dad never missed a chance to remind me, "Don't forget we're paying for part of your college. Be grateful." They never said that to my brother. For him, it was just a given. The longer I was away, the clearer it became. They weren't indifferent just because I was out of the house. They wanted distance because I reminded them of everything they didn't want. My grandma even admitted to me later that my mom once said she didn't feel like she had a second son. That stuck with me. The only small relief during that time was knowing I wasn't crazy. My extended family made it obvious they saw it too. My grandparents were proud of me. My uncle always checked in about school in the car, and my aunt kept telling me, "Don't let them get in your head. You're doing great." Without them, I would have felt completely alone. I realized the Civic, my scholarship, even the small college help, none of it came from love. It was only because my grandparents forced them to save face. My parents couldn't even pretend anymore. That's when I decided to post my story on Reddit and see how people reacted. And then, on a random Tuesday night in my second year of college, my phone rang. The name on the screen made me freeze. It was my brother. I hadn't talked to him much since he left for college. Growing up, we were never really close. He bullied me sometimes when we were younger, though looking back, it was more him copying the way our parents treated me. When I saw his name flash on my screen, my first thought was that he'd found my Reddit posts and wanted to chew me out. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I hit accept and said, "Hello?" "Hey," he said. His voice sounded calm, not angry. "So, I found your account." I braced myself. "Oh, yeah. I read everything," he said. There was a pause. "I'm not mad. I just wanted to talk." That caught me off guard. The first thing he told me was that he'd always known our parents favored him, but he didn't realize how extreme it looked from my side until he read my posts. "I thought you were just being dramatic when we were kids," he admitted. "But reading it now, Yeah, they really did screw you over. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there listening. Then he surprised me even more. He said being the favorite wasn't a gift, it was a burden. Mom smothered him constantly, checking his phone, asking about every friend, hovering over every assignment. Dad loaded him with impossible expectations. It was like they wanted me to be perfect because you weren't the one they wanted, he said quietly. That hit me hard. I'd always seen him as the chosen one who had it easy. But hearing him describe it, it sounded suffocating. We talked for almost 2 hours that first night. He told me he'd started therapy after moving out. He said he needed to unlearn a lot of the pressure our parents had drilled into him. I thought being their golden kid meant I had to be exactly what they wanted, he said. But it was just them trying to control me. He also told me he had a girlfriend. He sounded nervous saying it, like I'd judge him. Instead, I just laughed and said, "Good for you, man." Her name was Anna, a nursing student close to graduating. He said she was smart, kind, and the first person who made him feel like himself. He kept her secret for 2 years, knowing our parents would tear her down. It was the first time I'd heard him sound truly happy. After that, we talked more. Quick texts about school and work, and longer late-night calls where we compared childhood memories and finally admitted how differently we'd been treated. I told him about the car mess, the interventions, the photos Grandma showed me of when I was a baby. He got quiet after that. Then he said, "That explains a lot. No wonder they never treated you right. They never let go of what they wanted." He admitted he used to resent me when we were younger, not because of who I was, but because he felt like he had to live up to being the son they wanted. And if he didn't, he thought he'd lose their approval. "So yeah, sometimes I took it out on you. I'm sorry for that," he said. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more than I ever thought I'd hear from him. The more we talked, the more I realized we weren't on opposite sides anymore. We'd both been trapped in the same system, just in different ways. I was ignored and dismissed. Neither of us got real love. One night, he told me he'd already started planning not to move back home after graduation. He'd been working at an internship that offered him a full-time position. He said, "They think I'm coming back. They keep talking about it like it's set in stone. But I'm not. I can't. Living under them again would ruin me." I remember feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because it meant he was choosing his own life. Dread because I knew our parents would lose it when they found out. What surprised me most was how different he sounded. The arrogance from his teenage years was gone. He laughed more, asked about me, even joked about the Civic finally being better than duct tape and prayers. For the first time, it felt like I actually had a brother. Not just the kid who'd always been handed everything, but someone who genuinely wanted to reconnect. And now, years later, we were finally trying to build something real between us. Something our parents couldn't twist. It was strange. For so long, I thought I'd never get along with him. But once we started actually talking, it felt natural, like we were finally on the same side after years of being pushed against each other. And for once, that gave me hope. By the time my brother's graduation came around, our parents had convinced themselves he was coming home. They talked like it was a guarantee. My mom would say things like, "When he moves back in, he'll take over the upstairs office." And my dad bragged to family friends that, "Once our oldest is back, he'll help run things around here." They'd already written the script in their heads. I wasn't invited, and even if I had been, I couldn't have afforded it. My grandparents went, though, and they gave me the play-by-play later. According to them, everything started off normal. Big ceremony, photos, the usual. Afterward, during dinner, my brother dropped the bomb. He'd already accepted a full-time job offer from his internship, and he'd signed a lease on an apartment with a roommate. My grandma said my dad went silent. His jaw clenched, and he barely touched his food. My mom broke down crying right at the table. "Why would you do this to us? We gave you everything, and you're just going to abandon us," she sobbed. My brother tried to explain. He said it wasn't about abandoning them. He wanted his own life. He needed independence. My mom just kept begging, "Come home. Please, just come home." And when he refused again, my dad muttered, "Ungrateful." When my grandparents told me that, I wasn't even surprised. But what happened next took things to a whole new level of toxic. A few weeks later, my brother called me, fuming. "You won't believe this," he said. "Mom hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on Anna." I was floored. "Wait, a PI? For what?" "She wanted to prove Anna wasn't good enough for me," he said. "She thought Anna was the reason I wouldn't move back. She actually admitted it to me, like she was doing me a favor." Within a couple of weeks, the investigator came back empty-handed because Anna was, in his words, squeaky clean. Good grades, good family, no drama, nothing. My mom hated that. She told him she didn't trust Anna anyway and started calling her names. The worst one being when she called Anna a slut without ever having met her. That's when my brother lost it. He yelled at both of them, telling them they were obsessed and controlling. He told them flat out that their golden child treatment was abuse, and that if they couldn't respect him or his girlfriend, they weren't welcome in his life. I could practically hear the fury in his voice when he told me this. For once, he wasn't backing down. Word spread quickly through the family, and before long, another intervention was set up. This time, they asked me to join by video call since I couldn't travel. I'll never forget that night. My parents sat stiff on one couch, arms crossed, eyes cold. My grandparents, uncle, and aunt sat across from them. I was on the laptop screen propped on the coffee table. The family laid it all out. The favoritism, the private investigator, the constant control, the way they were driving both their sons away. My parents tried to deflect, but it wasn't working. When my turn came, I spoke up. You've ignored me for years because I wasn't who you wanted. You threw me scraps while giving him everything. And even now, when you could fix it, you double down. What do you even want from us? They didn't even look at me. My mom's eyes were glued to my brother's phone, where he was also on video. My dad stared at the floor. That's when my brother stepped in. Talk to him, he demanded. Talk to our brother for once in your lives. They reluctantly looked at me. My mom gave a teary half-apology. I'm sorry, she said quickly, then immediately turned back to my brother's screen, crying and begging him not to cut them off. My brother snapped, No, you don't get to ignore him again. Actually apologize to him. Mean it. My mom turned back, tears streaking her face, but I could tell she didn't mean it. She mumbled another, I'm sorry, then immediately tried to switch back to talking to my brother. That's when my dad exploded. He jumped up, his face red, and shouted, You want us to admit we screwed up? Fine, we screwed up. What do you want us to do? Time travel. We're paying for part of his college, too. What more does he want from us? The room went dead silent. My grandma's voice was sharp when she finally spoke. We don't want you to time travel. We want you to stop treating one son like he's disposable and the other like he's your trophy. My dad just sat down heavily and muttered, Everyone leave. The last thing my grandparents said before walking out was, We're disappointed in you both. Maybe losing two sons will finally teach you something. I sat there staring at the laptop screen, my heart racing. Even over video, I could feel the tension. My parents had been given every chance to fix things, and instead, they chose pride. After the last intervention, my parents shut down. They stopped showing up to birthdays, holidays, even the family reunion. Whenever anyone asked, the excuse was always working. They buried themselves in their jobs to the point my grandma said they sometimes slept in their cars instead of going home, like they couldn't face the empty house that reminded them of everything they'd lost. At first, they told everyone my brother was too busy to visit and that I was focused on school. But as months turned into years, people figured out the truth. Both of their sons had cut them off. That's when the desperation set in. My brother said they spammed him with calls and guilt trip texts, begging him to come home. He finally replied, I'm not coming back. Stop contacting me if you can't respect my boundaries. After that, they turned on me with the same messages about how I was throwing away my parents. I ignored them until one call where my dad played the victim. We gave everything, and now you treat us like strangers. I told him, You made us feel like strangers in our own house for years, and hung up. After that, the contact slowed down. The calls got fewer. The texts eventually stopped. I think they realized neither of us was coming back. Burnout hit fast. My grandma barely recognized my mom at the store. Messy hair, dark circles, exhausted. Neighbors said my dad trudged to work before sunrise and left late, hunched like a ghost. The parents who once bragged about their perfect son now looked hollow. At home, the house was dead. Laundry piled up, dishes left, gardens overgrown. They tried telling neighbors my brother was busy, and I was at school, but everyone could see through it. Their faces gave them away, tired, burned out, and ashamed. Meanwhile, my brother had a steady job and a serious girlfriend, and I was finishing my degree, still driving the Civic my uncle once approved. For the first time, we were actually brothers, and none of it involved our parents. That's the karma. They wanted control, tried to erase me, and smother him into their perfect picture. Instead, they pushed us both away. Now all they have is burned-out jobs and an empty house. 2 sons gone, a family that won't speak to them, and nothing left but the wreckage of their own choices. Sometimes my grandma asks if I'd ever reconcile with them. I tell her the same thing every time. They burned that bridge. I don't hate them, but I'm not going back. My brother feels the same. And that's the part I think readers will understand. There's nothing left to salvage. They wanted everything their way, and when life didn't bend for them, they collapsed under their own choices. So now they sit in that house, tired, burned out, alone, waiting for sons who won't ever return. That's exactly the ending they wrote for themselves.